It started small, little things that at first didn't seem like much. I had just moved into my new apartment, a quiet, modest place in a peaceful neighbourhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. A fresh start. The kind of place where you'd expect friendly neighbours, morning joggers, and the smell of fresh cut grass. And that's what it felt like at first. But then I met him. Mr. Gerald lived 2 houses down. He was in his early 60s, retired, and always sitting on his front porch, always watching. I remember our first conversation. I was locking my door, ready to head to work, when I heard his voice, calm, deliberate. "Morning, kiddo. Off to work, huh? You take the same route every day." I paused, startled. It was an odd thing to say, not "have a good day" or "nice weather," but an observation, a fact. He had been paying attention. I smiled politely. "Yeah, I guess." He just nodded, his eyes lingering on me a little too long. I shook off the uneasiness and left, telling myself he was just a friendly old man with too much time on his hands. But as the weeks went by, I started noticing things, little details that shouldn't have been noticed. One day, I was out grocery shopping when I heard his voice again, this time from behind me in the aisle. "Stocking up on your favourite coffee, huh?" I turned, surprised. He was standing there holding a can of the same brand I had in my cart. His smile was casual, but something about the way he said it unnerved me. I laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, I like this one." He nodded. "You always use 2 sugars, not too sweet, just the right balance." I felt my stomach tighten. I had never told him that. I had never told anyone that. I must have looked uneasy because he chuckled. "Oh, I just notice things. I have an eye for details." I forced a smile and made some excuse to leave, but as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching me. That night I told myself I was overreacting. It's just a harmless old man. Maybe he was just friendly, observant, that's all. But then the notes started appearing. They were small folded pieces of paper slipped under my door. At first they were just odd. "You shouldn't stay out so late." I stared at it for a long time. It was a strange thing for a neighbour to write. Maybe he was just concerned. Maybe he thought it was dangerous for a young woman to be out at night. But the next note made my skin crawl. "I heard you crying last night. I'm here if you need me." I froze. I had cried last night. I had been sitting on my bed, scrolling through old messages from someone I was trying to forget. But my windows were closed, my curtains were drawn. How did he know? I didn't tell anyone about the notes. I should have. But something about them made me feel watched, like if I acknowledged them, they'd become real. So I ignored them. But he didn't stop. A few days later, I was walking past his house when he called out again. "Rough night, huh?" I stopped dead in my tracks. He was sitting in his usual spot, rocking slowly in his chair. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "Saw your light on, real late." My blood ran cold. I hadn't just been awake, late. I had been sitting in the dark, staring at my phone. My lights had been off. I forced a nervous laugh. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." I hurried home, locked the door behind me and checked every window. Were they cracked open? Had I left the blinds up? I hadn't. Still, I told myself I was being dramatic. Maybe he had just assumed. Maybe it was a coincidence. And then, the footprints. It had rained that night. The ground was still damp in the morning. As I stepped onto my porch, something caught my eye. Footprints in the mud. They started from the sidewalk, walked across my yard, stopped directly beneath my bedroom window. I stared at them, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. My mind raced. Someone had been standing there, watching. A lump formed in my throat. I turned slowly, my eyes darting toward Mr. Gerald's house, and there he was, on his porch, watching me. I felt my body tense, my pulse hammering in my ears. He didn't wave, he didn't call out, he just smiled. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a friendly neighbour, this was something far more disturbing. I went to work that day, but I couldn't focus. Every sound startled me. Every movement in my peripheral vision made my heart jump. When I got home, I checked my doors twice, closed every curtain, told myself I was safe. But that night, as I lay in bed, my stomach twisted in knots. Then I heard it, a creak, software barely audible, from outside my window. I held my breath. The wind? An animal? My imagination? I didn't dare move. Minutes passed, then silence. I exhaled shakily. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe... Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You look beautiful in your blue sweater today." My heart stopped. I hadn't left my house wearing a blue sweater. I had changed into it after I got home. Inside my house, alone. How did he know? I swallowed hard, my hands shaking as I gripped my phone. Slowly, hesitantly, I turned my head toward the window, and in the dim glow of the streetlight, I saw it. A shadow. Standing. Watching. Right outside my house. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And for the first time since moving here, I felt truly afraid. I still remember the night I realized my life wasn't mine anymore. I had spent the entire day trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled deep in my gut. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe I was just reading too much into every little detail. That's what I kept telling myself, until I came home. I stepped onto my porch, balancing a bag of groceries, and reached for the doorknob. But the moment my fingers brushed against the handle, a cold wave of terror washed over me. The door was slightly ajar. I froze. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. Had I forgotten to lock it? Number I always locked my door, always. I hesitated, then slowly nudged it open with my foot, my breath caught in my throat. The air inside was still, heavy, the kind of stillness that told you something wasn't right. I stepped inside cautiously, every nerve in my body on edge. My eyes scanned the room. Everything looked normal. The couch, the TV, the bookshelves, all exactly where they should be. But something felt off. Then my gaze landed on the kitchen counter, my coffee mug, sitting in the sink. My favourite coffee mug, the one I hadn't used all day. I swallowed hard. My hands trembled as I set my groceries down and slowly backed away. I checked the fridge next. A bottle of water was missing. The chair at my dining table was slightly pulled out, just enough for someone to have sat there. Panic coiled in my stomach like a living thing. I turned toward the bookshelf, my mind racing, and then I heard his voice. "I love how you arrange your books. It's so neat." My blood ran cold. I had never invited him inside. He had never stepped foot in my house. And yet, he knew. I felt the walls closing in around me. My breath came in short gasps as my mind spun. He had been inside. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my ears, grabbed my phone, hands shaking as I scrolled through my call list. Who could I call? The police? A friend? Someone? Anyone? Then my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "You looked beautiful in your blue sweater today." The air in my lungs vanished. I hadn't worn my blue sweater when I left home. I had changed into it after coming back, inside. I could feel the blood drain from my face as my fingers turned numb around my phone. He had been watching me. I turned toward the window, my body screaming at me to run, hide, escape. And then I saw him, standing in his yard, watching. A slow, deliberate smile stretched across his face, and I knew, in that moment, that I was in danger. The storm had been raging for hours. Rain pounded against my windows, and the wind howled through the cracks in the old wooden frames. The power flickered a few times before cutting out entirely, swallowing my apartment in absolute darkness. I sighed, rubbing my arms against the sudden chill that crept in. Just a blackout. No big deal. I reached for my phone, but the screen stayed black. Dead. My charger was in the living room. A bolt of lightning illuminated the apartment for a brief second, casting long, twisting shadows across the walls. Too quiet. Too still. Then I heard it. A creak. Software slow. Right outside my bedroom door. I froze. The sound was unmistakable. The shift of weight on wooden floorboards. Someone was inside. A lump formed in my throat. My breathing became shallow. Every muscle in my body tensed. I listened. Silence. Had I imagined it? Was it just the house settling? Another creak? Someone was there. My heart pounded so loudly I thought whoever was out there could hear it. My mind screamed at me to move, but fear had rooted me in place. I reached blindly in the dark, my fingers curling around the handle of the small flashlight on my nightstand. My hands shook as I clicked it on. The dim beam barely cut through the darkness, but it was enough. I took a deep breath, forcing my trembling legs to move. Slowly, cautiously, I stepped toward the door. I didn't want to open it, but I had to know. I reached for the knob, my breath shallow and uneven. 1, 2, 3. I yanked it open, and there he was. Mr. Gerald stood in the hallway, bathed in the weak glow of my flashlight. My stomach dropped. He was inside my home. His face was eerily calm, as if nothing was wrong, as if this wasn't completely, utterly insane. And then he lifted his hand. Something small and metallic glinted in his fingers. A key. My house key. The air in my lungs vanished. His voice was soft, almost amused. "You should be more careful." A cold wave of terror crashed over me. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped in my throat. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. He took a step closer. "I didn't mean to scare you." Another step. "I just wanted to see you." I couldn't move. I couldn't think. His eyes never left mine, his smile too calm, too casual, like he was enjoying this. My pulse pounded in my ears. This was it. This was really happening. Then something inside me snapped. He put his hand on my chest. He started something unthinkable. He put inside me something. Adrenaline surged through my veins, shoving the fear aside. "Move!" I bolted. I didn't think. I just ran. I shoved past him, my shoulder slamming into his as I tore down the hallway. I felt his fingers graze my arm, reaching, grasping, but I was faster. I reached the front door, my hands fumbling with the lock. "Hurry, hurry!" My fingers slipped once, twice. Click! I yanked it open, the storm's wind almost knocking me back. I ran, barefoot. No coat, no phone, just raw, blind panic. I didn't stop, not even when I heard him call after me. "Wait, come back, we need to talk." My legs burned as I sprinted across the yard, rain soaking through my clothes. I reached the neighbour's house, pounding on their door, screaming. Lights flicked on, a voice behind the door. The lock clicked, and I collapsed inside, gasping, shaking, drenched to the bone. Behind me, in the dark and the rain, Mr. Gerald just stood there, watching, smiling, like this was just a game. And for the first time in my life, I knew I was being hunted. The moment the police arrived, I felt my knees buckle. The weight of fear, of exhaustion, of absolute violation crushed down on me. My neighbour's porch lights illuminated his expression, calm, almost amused, like this was all a misunderstanding. He stood there in the pouring rain, hands folded neatly in front of him, as if he had done nothing wrong. "I was just checking on her," he said casually, glancing at me like I was overreacting. "She gets scared at night. I was only making sure she was okay." My breath hitched, my fingers dug into my own arms as I watched him speak, my entire body trembling. Making sure I was okay. I wanted to scream, to tell the officers what I had been through, to make them understand, but all I could do was stare, my voice trapped, behind the lump in my throat. One of the officers gave me a reassuring nod before turning back to him. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us." For the first time his face changed, a flicker of annoyance. "Is that necessary?" His voice remained polite, but I could hear it, the shift, that quiet, simmering rage beneath his controlled tone. The officers didn't answer, they just stepped past him, pushing the door open to his house. And that's when everything unraveled. I didn't want to go inside, I didn't want to see whatever was waiting behind those doors. But I needed to, so I followed. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not rot, not filth. Something worse. Mr. My shampoo, my perfume, my detergent. The second thing that hit me was the wall. At first I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a collage. Pictures. Hundreds of them, of me. Some were old, pictures from weeks ago when I had first moved in. Me sitting on my porch, me leaving for work, me at the grocery store. But some were from tonight. A fresh Polaroid sat on his desk, still developing. It was me, standing in my room, from outside my window. I took a step back, bile rising in my throat. My stomach twisted in knots, my vision blurred with panic. The officers were still searching, their voices distant, muffled. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. Then I saw the journal. I hesitated before picking it up, my fingers trembling as I flipped through the pages. My name was written over and over, detailed notes, schedules. 6:45 a.m. She left for work, 6:02 p.m. She got home, changed into blue sweater. 8:15. She made tea, looked sad today. Maybe I should visit. I slammed the book shut, my pulse pounding. And then I saw the hair. A small envelope, sealed. But inside, strands of my hair. I choked on my breath. How? When? The walls felt like they were closing in, my legs unsteady beneath me. I turned and there he was, still outside, standing between two officers. He wasn't struggling, wasn't scared, just watching me. His lips curved into a smile, and then, as if he knew exactly what I was thinking, he mouthed the words, "You'll miss me." A shiver ran down my spine, ice settling in my veins. The officers took him away, but I knew this wasn't over. I moved out a week later. I packed everything in a hurry, throwing my clothes into boxes, not bothering to fold anything. I didn't care about neatness. I didn't care about anything except getting out of that place. Every second I spent in that apartment felt like he was still there, like his presence had seeped into the walls, into the air, into my skin. I scrubbed the floors, wiped every surface, trying to erase the feeling of him watching me. But it didn't matter. It would never go away. The new apartment was different, a gated building, security cameras, a fresh start. But the first night I spent there, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps, for creaks, for breathing. Even now, even in a new place, I still wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, my heart hammering. I still check my doors, my windows. I still see his face in my nightmares, and I still hear his voice whispering in the dark. "You'll miss me." But he was wrong. I will never, ever forget what he did, and I will never, ever forgive myself for not realizing it sooner, because that night I almost didn't make it out.